What's up, YouTube? It's Chulu's Comics, and I'm back again with episode 6 of Wolverine Wednesdays. This week, I'm bringing you my synopsis of books 11, 12, and 13, which is the first three parts of the Gehenna Stone Affair, as introduced in Wolverine Title Series Volume 2. And once again, these are some books that I would love to have slabbed this time, mostly for sentimental value. I mean, these books, um, I love the cover art. I love the fact that these books deal with the supernatural, and the best part being is that actually the first part of the series is based here in Northern California, here in San Francisco. I'm in Northern California, so that's pretty cool for me. Let me show you guys the first few covers. We got number 11. Pretty cool cover there. No back cover art. That's pretty much the end of the whole Wolverine gallery and the double covers that we were getting for a while. But still, really cool books. I love this cover right here, number 12, part 2. We got a SFPD police car right there, which is pretty cool. And, of course, number 13. Nice red cover with the demon in the background. Wolverine on fire, looking like he's in hell or something. But yeah, really cool covers. Really interesting story. So not too much more to be said about this series, other than let's get into it. Hope you enjoy it. All right, guys. So we'll start off with issue 11, titled "Brother's Keeper." Here we have part 1 of a 6-issue series. Wolverine helps his buddy and ace pilot Archie Corrigan deal with Archie's mentally unstable brother in the city of San Francisco. While there, some supernatural forces that are after the infamous Gehenna Stone. I just want to explain briefly what Gehenna is, because I didn't know prior to reading the storyline. Basically, in the Hebrew Bible, it mentions a place of Gehenna is a small valley outside of Jerusalem, where some former kings of Judah had sacrificed children by fire to the gods. After that, it was deemed to be a cursed place. I think it's just important to note that, because we get a little bit of a feeling for it, what it is, and for the storyline, and we get to see how important it is once we see all the supernatural forces that Wolverine and all his buddies are going to be going up against. This issue starts out giving the reader a really nice overview and idea of the geography and landscape of the streets of San Francisco, which, me being from Northern California, I very much enjoy. Peter David tries to set a tone with this story by opening it up with the last couple of lines from the stanza of Rudyard Kipling's poem, The Winners. Down to Gehenna, or up to the throne, he travels the fastest who travels alone. I think it sets a nice tone to the story by painting the picture that although one travels fastest going at it alone, the journey could either lead you to hell or up to the tippy top of success, which also, in my opinion, leads to the old adage of it's lonely at the top. So either way, it's a subtle yet powerful way to begin the story. Soon we're introduced to a couple of thugs who have broken into the San Francisco Museum of Antiquities, and while the two have the very strange names of Ernst and Jaroka, at first glance the two don't seem to have anything really outstanding about them. They're your typical run-of-the-mill, bumbling B-level henchmen, and they're set out to steal the Gehenna Stone. But the two end up making enough noise to catch the attention of the guard, who catches them in the act of trying to steal the stone. In their bumblings, they inevitably drop and shatter the stone, which indicates that it was never the real stone to begin with, but a fake. Now Ernst and Jaroka's fangs really come out as they turn their attention to the guard. And I mean that with the pun intended, as we find out that the two are actually vampires. Splash page and the credits beginning. The Gehenna Stone Affair, written by Peter David, penciled by John Buscema, inker Bill Sienkiewicz, letterer Ken Bruzenak, colorist Mark Torello, editor Bob Harris, and editor-in-chief Tom DeFalco. Stanley presents Brother's Keeper. The splash page itself is decent artwork and well done, but personally, one that I felt a bit lacking when compared to the previous pages, in the title series so far. And comes busting in through the doors of the Princess Bar, and he's really upset by the news that he's just received. His brother, Bert, who's back stateside, is about to be committed to a mental facility, and Archie's pretty much the only one that can stop it. Archie goes on to explain to Patch that he and his rich father had a falling out, so when Archie's father passed away, he left Archie nothing, but left his brother Bert a small fortune in the hopes that the weight of the financial responsibility would straighten Bert out. The biggest problem is, however, that Bert didn't get straightened out by all that responsibility. See, Bert is a huge movie buff who has trouble separating movies from reality. He often thinks he's the main character in a movie, and has at times thought that he was Tarzan, Sherlock Holmes, and even Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz. Now, Bert and Archie's Aunt Ruthie is trying to get Bert committed so that she can take over his inheritance. And I have to mention really quickly, if you guys go back and read the story for yourself, pay attention to how Peter David writes Wolverine. He's cool, he's calm, he's collected, and most importantly, he's wisecracking, which is, it's a stark contrast to Miller's Wolverine, who's dark and brooding and everything's super serious. This Wolverine, he's still taking everything seriously, but he tells a lot of jokes and has fun, along the way, which I think is pretty cool. Archie asks Patch to accompany him to San Francisco to talk to his brother. Patch claims he doesn't want to go because it's none of his business, but Archie is insistent. The entire time they're carrying on this conversation through the streets of Madripoor, Patch notices a guy who is repeatedly getting beat up and thrown out of a bar onto the street in front of them. Patch keeps pumping him up and sending him back into the bar to fight. On Archie's final plea to Patch to accompany him, Jessica Drew, who had been following them the whole time, it seems like, chimes in and says that she's willing to go too. Patch says, "Look, tell you what, we'll leave it up to fate." But instead of flipping a coin or rolling the dice, Patch says, "If they throw this guy out of the door again, I don't go. But if they throw him out the window, I'll go." And before you know it, the guy comes flying out the window. So needless to say, Wolverine, Archie, and Jessica make the trek across the globe to check in on Bert, Archie's brother. They make it to Bert's place, which Patch points out is loaded with more stuff than an antiques museum. After talking with Bert, the gang finds out that he's mostly normal and that he's working on an academic dissertation on ancient cultures. As the gang makes their way out of the house and into a taxi on the Bert seems to have fooled them into believing that he's normal for now, as he pulls what seems to be the real Gehenna stone out of the top drawer of his desk. Next, we flash to Jessica Drew, who is visited by Mr. Tuttle, the curator of the San Francisco Museum of Antiquities, and he's there to enlist her help in tracking down the real Gehenna stone. Tuttle catches Jessica up on the rest of the story, informing her that the stone in the museum's possession had been replaced by a fake, and that the men who were there to steal it were vampires. Jessica agrees to take a look around. We cut to the courthouse where Archie's brother Bert is inevitably a no-show for his competency hearing. Archie is nervous and he's pretty pissed. As the clock ticks on, tempers in the courtroom begin to flare as Archie and his aunt get into familiar squabbles. We also get a glimpse of a horse on the streets of San Francisco clip-clopping its way down the street. And just as the courtroom begins to work itself into a frenzy, and the judge threatens to hold Archie in contempt for his brazen actions against his aunt, we see a huge crash as in comes Bert riding a horse through the courtroom at his own competency hearing. The judge is screaming at Bert for him to get off the horse. Archie is screaming at Bert to explain himself. Patch is screaming at Archie to get over here because he has something to show him. And Bert is ranting about the forces of evil and how Baal wants to create a new race of undead on the earth. And just as Archie is yelling at Bert that there are no forces of evil, boom, right on cue, an army of undead creatures comes crashing into the courtroom after Bert. And with this comes the end of Book 11. Issue 12, titled The Straits of San Francisco. Wolverine and his pals are really up against it as vampires in the streets of San Francisco. I should give a disclaimer that the entirety of this book is one big chase scene. Not a whole lot of substance, but some good jokes and great action shots. Also, I really love this cover. It's weird to see the old Knucklehead hanging off the SFPD police car. It's pretty sick. The book opens up with the judge crashing into his chambers, tattered robes from nearly escaping, locks himself in and calls for the chief of police for backup. Boom, now here we have a really nice two-page spread of a splash page, conveying action the way that we're used to seeing it. Wolverine and the gang going toe-to-toe with a vampire horde. The script by Peter David, pencils by John Buscema, inks by Bill Sinclair, letters by Ken Berzenak, colors by Glennis Oliver, editors Bob Harris, and chief Tom DeFalco. The Straits of San Francisco with some pretty cool Indiana Jones font, probably since Bert is dressed up like Indy. As Wolverine starts beating up vamps left and right, he gets clues that these may not be genuine vampires. One, because he breaks some teeth, and two, because they're walking around in the daylight. As the fight continues, Bert makes his way on horseback out of the courthouse and onto the streets of San Francisco. Jessica follows him and tags along for the ride. In the meanwhile, Patch and Archie steal a cop car in order to track down Bert by the scent of the horse that still hangs in the air in the city. A group of vamps follow suit, and right behind them. Finally, we get a glimpse of the one in charge, a being who seems to be pulling the strings, and as we soon learn, seems to be holding the majority of the Gehenna stone. Soon, Bert confirms what we all thought, that these are all, and they want to assemble pieces of the Gehenna stone in order to bring to fruition some prophecy. So he stole that stone fragment from the museum before they could. As Bert and Jessica continue to make their way through the city with the vampires hot on their tails, we get glimpses of the fact that Bert is still very much whacked. Although he's the one man who can see exactly what's going on with the stone, he still thinks that he fought Nazis as Indiana Jones. This continues with the vamps in hot pursuit of Jessica and Bert. Patch and Archie are right behind them. Wolverine is forced to pop his claws and shred some rubber to stop the carload of vampires. Unfortunately, it sends the car careening off the road into a local comic book store that just opened up for business. But just when they shake one car, a second car, this time a police car full of vampires, comes in and starts shooting up Wolverine and Archie. Wolverine gets hit in the head, neck, and chest. It throws his senses all off because the bullet bounces off his adamantium skull and he hears a ringing in his head. Wolverine down but not out, as we often see him, comes up with a plan to stick it to the vampires in the other car. He jams his claws into the car and tells Archie to trust him and just punch it. Boom, the next page shows the cop car being thrust headfirst into one of San Francisco's trademark cable cars. With all of the immediate dangers seemingly taken care of, the story ends with the group deciding to get out of Dodge and head back to Madripoor since Bert is now a wanted man, and Archie, Patch, and Jessica probably are too now. The book ends with the infamous last words of, "Things can't get any worse," as we see the shadowy figure that we saw earlier in the book. Well, let's see what happens next. Issue 13, titled Blood Ties. As the group makes their way to Madripoor, Bert explains the secret behind the Gehenna Stone. Upon reaching the airport, however, our heroes are ambushed by the demon Baal, who gets his claws on the stone and makes off with it. The story starts out with a shot of the Princess Bar in Madripoor, where two unknown gents already seem to have a piece of the Gehenna Stone. At this point, though, we don't know how many more pieces are out there. Next, we cut back to San Francisco, with Patch talking crap to Archie, saying things like, "Come with me to SF, Patch. Meet my brother, Patch. It'll be fun, Patch. You have a way with people, Patch." Which is really funny to me because it reminds me of Craig and Smokey in the movie Friday.
I can't believe you got me in the mix with this fool.
Oh, man, I ain't put that joint to your lip and make you smoke it.
Might as well. Come on, Craig, man. Stimulate your mind, man. It's Friday. Gonna get you high.
Why you bringing up old shit?
Sorry about the quality on that, but I had to do that. But anyways, just as our guys are on their way to the airport, they get popped by SFPD for having a stolen vehicle that Patch had hotwired and stole in the previous issue. Another great splash page with great art and awesome action. The story Blood Ties is brought to us by the writer Peter David, penciler John Buscema, inker Bill Sinkovich, letterer Ken Bruzenak, colorist Glennis Oliver, editor Bob Harris, and chief Tom DeFalco. As Patch somersaults onto the hood of the police car, the officer shoots Patch in the arm. Patch immediately pops his claws in the hood in the hopes that it would do enough damage to stop it. Next, Wolverine somersaults his way back to the car, and the gang persuades Bert to give them the full story on the stone. As we cut back to the Princess Bar, we see the twins again, who continue to bicker between each other, but it's sort of a tense fighting that seems to have been brought off by some outside forces. I wonder if the stone has anything to do with it. Meanwhile, back in Cali, Bert is explaining that the tale is also true. In ancient times, the foulest place on earth was called Gehenna, a small city outside the holiest of all cities, Jerusalem. It was literally a dump, a fire pit where all refuse was burned. It was also a place of unspeakable evil, led by a demon, Baal, which means master. Baal spent most of his time leading his followers into loathsome and pervasive rituals, including the consumption of human blood. Bert goes on to say that God sent a warrior known only as the Hand of God to dispel the evilness, a warrior armed with unbreakable steel. Does that sound familiar? Adamantium, maybe? Armed with unbreakable steel and divine right. But as the warrior smote Baal, his soul was captured by a multifaceted gem Baal's followers had prepared for him. The warrior continued to slay the rest of Baal's followers. On a bloody battlefield, the hand of God smashed the gem containing Baal's soul and hurled hundreds of pieces into the four winds to never be assembled until the end times. Unfortunately, many of the pieces have been uncovered in archaeological digs all around the world, and pieces have slowly been coming up missing. and Bert believes someone claiming to be the descendant of Baal is to blame. As Bert finishes up the story, Patch asks to see the part of the stone that Bert was holding. He has like a Schmeagol moment where he wigs out and neurotically repeats, "No, it's mine, my stone, you can't have it." The team seems to brush it off as part of Bert's unstable and eccentric nature. Meanwhile, back in Madripoor, we see that the twins are having more turmoil between them, and signs seem to continue to point to the stone as to the reason why. As Patch and the gang make it to the airport, the Baal descendants and his minions are there waiting for our group of heroes. While back in Madripoor, the stone seems to get the better of the two brothers as they knife fight to the death over the stone. A huge long fight scene ensues at the airport as the vampires get the drop on our heroes. Wolverine is forced to pop his claws, even though he's still Tech Patch. Unfortunately, the vamps get the better of Bert and rip the jewel from his neck. Finally, we get our first glimpse of the current incarnation of Baal. Wolverine tries to face him, but he's smacked away like so much volleyball. We get a nice fight between Wolverine and Baal. Wolverine states that he tries to push his fear aside and instill a little fear of his own, but Baal is too strong. Baal tries to rip Wolvie apart, but he's really confused when he can't. He doesn't know about the adamantium skeleton. With Wolverine in overwhelming pain, the berserker in him kicks in and he starts to hack and slash. Baal, however, is still able to get the best of Wolverine and make his escape. Archie seems to think that it's for the best. But the long and short of it is, Wolverine and Bert both agree that they need to go after them, no matter what. Finally, we get one last look at Madripoor, where O'Donnell notices a leaky ceiling. Unfortunately, it's leaking with the blood of the twin brothers who fought to the death over the stone. Be sure to stay tuned next week for the next episode called Flying Wolves. Alright, you guys, well, thank you guys for sticking around, sticking it out with me for another Wolverine Wednesday. I can't wait to reach the conclusion of the Gehenna Stone affair in next week's episode 7 of Wolverine Wednesday. And like always, until next time, keep stacking hella comics.